Hi everyone, this is Meghna, and we're back with another episode. And today we have an entrepreneur that I really admire, and also a brand that I want to know more about. She's none other than Shruti, and she's the founder of Narika. And we'll hear more about Narika and about Shruti in a minute. But hi Shruti, how are you
I'm
doing today?
doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well too. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for your time and being here. So, without any further ado, let's start with the podcast. So, why don't you introduce yourself to our viewers, a bit about yourself? What did you study, and what are you currently doing?
Definitely. So, for I'm assuming your audience is going to be a lot of young people. So maybe I'll try to keep it short, but at the same time, just give a little bit of background on my undergrad. So I was studying in Mumbai in a college called Mithibai, and I studied finance actually. After that, I also worked in finance. But I think one thing about finance was that as much as I loved it, I just happened to be decently good at it. Is why I was there. I always felt like there is something else, but I don't know what it is, and I thought that is why I wanted to do masters so that I could have some directions on where I want to go. And I think my masters changed my life. I have studied at ESSEC Business School, where it's a school based in Paris. But the most brilliant thing about that school is that you're very open to choose anything you would want to do and build your own career. And I think that is exactly what I needed. While I kept telling myself I want to be a personal a personnel in the investment banking domain, I knew deep down that I want to find what I want to do. And that is what happened with me. One after the other, I started meeting people that resonated with how I wanted to build and how I looked at world. I did not have an industry focus. I did not have anything specific, but one thing led to another. And just one sec, just one. I'm so sorry. So I'll just pick it up from where I was speaking. So I think
Sure,
one thing
sure.
led to another, and I started meeting people that made sense in terms of how they looked at the world. So I worked with a couple of startups right from the early stage. As well as the incubated ones, as well as the funded ones, to realize that there is one thing that I was doing by default, which was working in companies that were driven by sustainability. And that actually changed my mind. I never realized, but I was resonating a lot with the idea of consumer goods that could impact the lives of people in a positive way. And that is what, during my last job, when I was into it for 2 years already, I thought that why don't I do something for India? And that is where the journey of Narika began. So I'll stop here, but this is my background.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So, since ESSEC is also ranked one of the best business schools in the world, why didn't you say continue pursuing your job in France or any other country? Why did you take the risk of entrepreneurship? Why did you come back to India and start Narika? And that too, I think a brand. I think you touched the taboo or like the sensitive issue in India. So why? What was the thought process behind doing this?
So I think it's very strange, right? How you might have heard this is this one speech by Steve Jobs where he says that dots always get connected looking backwards, right? So I did not know what I
Mm-hmm.
was doing when I was 22. I moved to France, right? I moved with an agenda to find what I want to do. The first startup that I worked in was actually a very early age startup that was trying to touch base upon an area that was really difficult. And I won't get into the solution that they were building, but it was a four people team where I was the fifth one, and we were trying to do something completely wacky. After that, the second company that I worked for was my own, where I built a startup from scratch and actually ran it with my co-founder back in Paris, which made me actually realize that I love the thrill. And then finally, the job that I was working on was a company that was trying to solve at a large scale. It was a sustainable marketplace. At a large scale, they wanted to solve the problem of obtaining reusable goods and tech products and so on and so forth. So I think I had had enough of helping so many companies as well as my own projects with solutions that were devouring around sustainability. But as a woman myself, I was really affected by what I was doing to the environment. So I think the fact that I was using pads really bothered me. The fact that I was taking disposable cups, make coffee and then throwing it away was really bothering me. So I was like, what am I even doing if I don't answer those questions? And those critical questions that I had for myself, and then I asked around to others, I realized that it's a very common problem. Girls are feeling about like feeling a lot of things, but they're not able to solve it because you don't have an alternative sometimes. If you don't get a coffee tumbler with you, you will not be able to drink coffee. So sustainability wasn't about inconvenience for me, it was always about convenience. So I think aise kar karke periods is something that was really first hand for any woman, any menstruator. So I think that is where I was like, if I want to solve a big problem, let's pick up something big. I think periods is just one of the first that we are solving. As we go on in the chat, I'll share more about what else are we looking at. So that's how we thought about building a product that's sustainable. Europe is very already familiarized with reusable products. I wanted to see how India would react, and that's when I was still working at the job. And to answer your question, it wasn't a one day decision. I think for 6 months I kept doing back and forth from India and Paris to actually spend my own money to actually come back to the country, be sure that it's something that the women are liking. And once our prototype was approved is when I actually quit my job, and then I moved. So I think these are the lesser known facts that people think like it's a one day decision, but it was actually a 6 month of day and night working on a project as well as a job to actually make it to this point.
Got it. Got it. I really like the statement that you mentioned that sustainability is not about inconvenience but about
Yeah.
convenience to you. So that really makes sense. And also, when there are so many environmental concerns or when there's so many things that we can do with regards to sustainability, why specifically did you choose the aspect of periods or menstruation or to build something in this category?
So again, that's a very nice question. Actually, it's something I remember very distinctly that I actually was using pads, and that's what we are taught in India, right? I used to carry pads back to France and actually use it while I was working and everything. So this one day, I felt like I'm going to get my periods, and I didn't. And then the next day, same thing happened. And I'm pretty sure anybody who's listening to this knows what I'm talking about, right? You put a pad, and then nothing comes, and then the next day, nothing comes. You ended up with rashes. I was feeling itchy all night, all day, and nothing happened. And then when I was throwing it in the dustbin, I think that is the stark moment where I was like, hey, what the hell? I work and I go embrace sustainability, and then I do this. And then I was like, you know what, let me I spent the last night looking like for alternatives. What do people do? Because it's not even a topic people discuss every day. And I found a couple of very interesting solutions, which was like reusable underwears and whatnot. So I was like, okay, but who uses them? Even I was skeptical as a customer. So next day, very luckily or maybe coincidentally, I was meeting my like college peeps and also my friends. So there were 5 girls, and I again remember each one of them. One of them was Indian, one of them was Chinese, one of them was French, and the last one was US. So she was American. And all of these people, all of us were from every part of the world. And I asked this question that, hey, what do you guys do to and all of us work in sustainability. So I was like, what do you guys feel about how we impact the environment around our periods? And very funnily, all the girls in the Asian domain, which is Chinese girl and the Indian girls, we were like, we use pads, and the others were like, oh no, we use period underwear, obviously. And that is when my life just blew away, that I was with my best friend who was using such a product, but we don't talk about it. That was really like bothering to me. So what I started doing was that I started asking people in India, hey, did you know this, there's this product? Hey, did you know? And I got an answer of a resounding no. We didn't know that an underwear can soak blood. And that was my moment. I was like, hey, you know what, let me think about it. And that's where the journey of the 6 months started, where I started researching, coming back to India and building the first product.
That's a very interesting insight that, it's like a very opening conversation that you had when people from the West, they're very used to using period underwears, but we are used to using pads. I think now a lot of people are also using menstrual cups and tampons. So, in terms of talking about menstrual cups and tampons, what is your take on these products, and how is Narika building a different sustainable product? So, why should someone use a period underwear? And so, say with pads, we know why we should switch from that, but say with tampons and menstrual cups, why should I switch to Narika's period underwear?
Definitely. So, honestly, our motto has always been convenient sustainability, right? And you also rightfully mentioned that it's amazing to imagine sustainability in a convenience format. It makes your life easy because I think there's a very common notion that sustainability is going to be inconvenient, and that is what is the problem of the world that we are facing since the last 5 years. I'm pretty sure it's getting better with a lot of changes, and I think it's the same, right? When it comes to cup, it's essentially a cup that we are building. If you see, period underwear is something like a cup where the blood comes, it gets stored, and then you wash it, and then you make it ready for the next use, and then you use it again. It's essentially just like a cup. It's the fact that it faces cultural friction in the country that we have one more solution for you. So if you are somebody who wants to choose between them, I'm not going to advocate for one product over the other, because both of them are essentially doing the same thing. It's more about what you find convenient. Culturally, friction, say, I mean, inserting has always been something that has been considered a taboo. Now, again, we can go and educate the world and keep telling them, hey, inserting is normal, or else we can take care of the cultural friction and build a product that can, actually suit the convenient needs of the women. Because they might just tell you on your face that, hey, yeah, sure, I'll think about it, but not because of the cultural upbringing that we have had. So even personally, me in the sector, I have not used a cup because of the same cultural inhibitions that I might have had. And I'm that Nari that did not choose the cup even though I knew about it, and actually blew my mind when I came to know about period underwear. So I think I want to serve to those naris. So that's the first part of the question. When it comes to tampons, again, they're disposable solutions. What I feel about them is that they're definitely much better than a pad. It again has the same cultural frictional problem, which is inserting. But at the same time, if again you find disposable solution during travels, for example, where a period underwear or a menstrual cup might not be the best solution, because where will you clean it and store it, then please use tampons. And again, try to make a mix of solutions that go and make you feel convenient, which is the agenda. So I don't think I have anything against them. I think both are, like, all of them are great products. It just depends on what you are as an Ari.
Right, right. Um, Very interesting. So, talk about Nari. How did the name Narika come into picture? So, why that particular name, and is there any story behind choosing the name for the brand?
Most definitely, actually. So because the agenda that I like from the story that we've heard so far, there was definitely this push to do something in sustainability for something I understand. And I think what I understood is that women problems are the most understood in my head, and to solve them would give me a chance to solve a big problem rather than a small problem. In India, a country where there are 400 plus million plus menstruators, it's the best market to go and actually 40 crore women को serve करने के लिए solution है. So that is how this whole thing started. But we knew Nari is something that is not just a word that is a girl or a woman, but it's actually a very deep rooted old word, right? Like, it's not what we use every day. And then I realized, like, in a conversation with a gynac when I was interviewing her, like, taking her feedback for the product, she was like कि, essentially, Shruti, तुम तो वही बनाई हो जो हम पहले करते थे. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, you actually took the concept of us using old clothes and rags that they used to use in the back in 50 years ke pehle. For those of you all who don't know, cloths were
Right.
used as pads, right? So she was like कि श्रुति तुम बस वही बना दियो better. And I was like, oh my god, that's so true. Because essentially we've taken technology and we've built something that the women already know and feel familiar with. So I think that is what was this whole idea, that we are actually very deep rooted in terms of what was happening. We have just come back and did that 50 or 60 years ahead of time. So I thought that nari is a very nice word. Now we discussed all kinds of nari this, nari that, this nari project and so on. But I think my sister actually one day she was like, that you always talk about Narika as a brand, at that point, nameless brand as a brand that will not just solve for periods but also for other problems. So why do you want to restrict it? It seems like a company that is going to be of every woman. So of every woman is Narika, which is of woman. So she was like, why don't we just call it Narika? So it's like Narika Khushi, Narika Pride, Narika, whatever you want to solve, because it's of woman. So in Hindi, that's how we twisted it, and then we wanted to give a modern twist. So we took the ka and we made it with a C, so that modern women still relate to it, but we
Hmm.
have a story.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. Like right now, I can like I always thought I knew what Nari was. Ka I thought maybe for like vibes you guys are putting Narika, but now I understood what it
Actually,
actually
it's
means.
funny. One more
Um.
thing that I find very funny about Narika is that because it sounds like a girl's name, so people sometimes stop me
Yes.
and say, "Hey, Narika, can you come with me?" And I'm literally like, "But I'm not Narika." And then I somehow like Shuru, I used to feel like, "But I'm not Narika." But eventually, I started playing with that concept on my own. So I started calling people Narika.
Hmm.
So like I would joke with somebody being like, "What would Narika do? What would Narika say?" So we actually now we think
Hmm.
of Narika as a person because everybody thinks it's a name
Hmm.
of a
Hmm.
girl. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. So, speaking of technology, design, functionality of the product, can you walk us through the number of iterations you're done from prototype to the product that's there now, and how it serves the purpose, the functional purpose, the design, and also the aesthetics? So, can you walk us through the
definitely,
process?
definitely. So, whenever you're building any product, a very, very basic thing that anybody would tell you to do is to build a prototype and then an MVP. An MVP is a minimum viable product. When you build a prototype, it's like it shows what it's going to do, but it's not completed or it's perfect yet, right? So that's what we did. We started with a prototype in 2022 at the end, where the goal was to make a product that does the job, and then we'll see based on feedback how do we make it aesthetical and the other feedbacks that you asked me, which is design and all. So pehle to hamara wo focus tha. So I think in the prototypes what we did was that we built a 4 layer gazette which does the job. That is all that we cared about. You could put it on your existing underwear for the moment, you could just use it like a pad, but the point is that the gazette should work. So the gazette consists of 4 layers that we built right in India, made in India completely, and treated with antibacterial treatment to make it completely PFA free as well as bacterial free for the women. So that was our prototype actually. We went to doctors, we went around and got it approved to the MVP, which is the first product that we now have in the market, but of course its design has again changed. So the MVP, which is the minimum viable product, got in the market in around 2023, where we actually gave it out to real women. We tied up with a school and we gave it out to the mothers and the children of the school to test our products after the prototype was approved. And in the same time, I don't know if we've spoken about this, but our company got incubated in France in Station F, which is the largest incubator in the world. So we also tested the products with women in Europe to get their feedback in terms of quality. So finally, I would say that the prototype stage still had like 5 to 6 iterations, but the MVP, which is what went to the people, must have had more than 50 iterations, because we were bothered about every ounce of elastic, every ounce of stitch, everything that went on the women's body. So I think that is what took the MVP the longest time also to get approved, because even if you would feel a small tuck near the elastic on your thigh, we would change it. So that's the kind of stuff that we did. And then finally, like to answer your question, what we have right now is basically a product that is completely made out of pure bamboo. We have 4 layers still in the gazette, that hasn't changed, and the design and the functionality of it remains the same, which is that we absorb, the highest capacity absorbs 6 times more than a regular pad, and the lowest one absorbs around 3 to 4 pads. And the idea is that the women can wear it like a regular underwear. Depending on the flow, they can decide if they want to wear two, like through the cycle, or three or four, and that's how they can choose it.
Got it. Got it. And any idea about your competitors in India specifically who are making period underwears? And if there are any competitors, then how are you different from them?
Definitely, that's a great question. So I think competitors, like in any like field, or wherever you're working, they're definitely going to be there. If anything, like in this at this point of where period underwears are in the country, competitors are actually good because we all come and educate the market together. Right now we are 10 of them, for example, in a country where there's 40 crore menstruators. All of us educating at the same time actually works in our favor, because then people know about period underwear at least. So that's how the scenario is right now. Now, are there competitors in India? Most definitely they are. Some of them are by brands that are already established in the D2C space, that have an offering of a period underwear. Some of them are categorized by having offerings in other respect, but have one period underwear also. And some of them are only period underwear based companies as well. So we have all three of them. So I think if I talk about only period underwear based companies, that is my direct competition, I would say we are about 5 to 10 of them that are doing pretty well. Every company has their own niche. I think where we stand very true to the idea and in the market and the consumers, where we stand apart, is that we've been very honest and open about the fact that we're not a design based company. So what you will see other companies doing would be have a lot of design, colors, variations, and design facilities. What we believe in is that we make our tech better every day. What we can guarantee is that when you touch our underwear, we are the softest in the market, and we can say that anywhere and to any customer we go to. When you look at a product, you would know that it absorbs the most in the market. So I think our offering is the fact that we are tech first, we are solution first, and then we go ahead and then work on our designs as and when the customer needs it. So that is what really distinctifies us. And I think another thing is that safety is also something we do. We have been very serious about the fact that we didn't launch a product till we were actually tested for being antibacterial. I think that is what is lacking in the space right now, not just with my competitors but generally, because there's no standard set by the government to get tested and then listed. So I think because of that not happening, a lot of companies have taken it for granted. And that is something we also differentiate in, which is that we are definitely tested by a German lab with various parameters, around more than 50 to 100 parameters on safety for the women and the sensitive areas.
Got it. Got it. I was just curious about one thing. So, since you've spent a lot of time in testing the product and doing a lot of market research, how did you fund this entire process? So, I'm assuming you're bootstrapped right now. Are you funded
So
or
that's a
bootstrapped?
great question. That is the biggest chicken egg problem. Any bootstrap versus any funded company also has. Most definitely, we are bootstrapped. Our journey actually, like I said, started in 2022 end, but I was still working. Right, so that is when my salaries and my savings were getting used. So when I said that I was coming to India and then testing it and then staying in Tirupur, Ludhiana, Bombay, everywhere, it was funded by me, by my savings. But I think when I really came back, and last year in 2023 May incorporated the company after the incubation, that is when the real question arises, which is how do we fund the operations of the company, right? MVP that chalo, I can get it on my own, but what do we do for the branding aspects, for the marketing, for the operations, for the stock that you need, everything? So that is when I took a like a bank loan. So we definitely took debt financing to get the ball rolling. And that is how we funded the rest of the, I would say, 6 months. And then after that we started funding the operations through the revenue that we have through website. So I would say till from May to like November, we kept funding it through debt, and then we started using the funds of the company, because we started making, like, we launched our website in August, so we started making money right from September. Because like any other bootstrap company would tell you, we don't have cash to burn. So we don't burn cash, we invest in marketing, and then we get the returns, and that's how we are growing. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I mean, slightly risky move, but I think it's going well right now for you. Like in terms of taking the debt and then getting the ball rolling, there might be some sort of pressure that you have to repay the debt at some point.
Definitely, definitely.
So,
So I think that pressure will never go, and that never goes actually.
mm,
As a founder, it's just about that conviction, and I think that's what keeps you going. Of course, like it happens every day, but the thing is that it's honestly like it's one of those things. Yeah, like I think debt financing is considered very scary and very personal. And even I did as a kid. I would say like when I was in my 21, 22 era, I would think that बाप रे लोन लेके कैसे करूंगी, like and that's very very normal. But I think you realize that most of the projects are funded by debt financing actually, and it's not such a bad thing because it's a loan on the company first, and second thing is that it's based on your project, so you get the loan based on the project, so the interest rates are much lower actually if your project is in a space that needs help in the country, for example. If you take a personal loan, of course it's more expensive. So there are a lot of schemes by the government also to encourage you to take debt financing. For example, there is Mudra Finance that actually gives you a loan at almost no interest rate. So it's not technically a loan
okay,
even. It's literally a borrowed sum of money that you can give back. So there's a lot of things that make debt also a very viable option.
got it, got it. And I think I've seen on your social media and on your website that you go to schools and distribute your products to
Yeah.
kids as well. So, so how was that process like? How was talking to kids about period underwear? How was it breaking the taboo of not using pads and shifting to something unconventional, at least for this generation?
Definitely, definitely. So, the moment we actually approved our MVP, the first thing that I wanted to do was to actually make sure that we don't forget that we started with an agenda to be impact first. And that is what was very important to me and my team also. So, the first iteration of like I told you, like we did the MVP with a school where there were mothers and daughters that tried our products, but after that, when we commercially launched our product, we first went to a government school to distribute our products to ensure that they first are the ones that first get to use our products and then anybody else. That is how the journey towards going to a government school started. But then I realized, oh my god, man, these girls, they are 9 years old, they have so many questions, and they are so smart. Like, it just amazed me that with the right amount of education, they're actually so capable of taking the word forward and fulfilling our dream to make Narika reach to the world, as well as to the whole country, where they can understand that sustainability in period matters. So imagine if we teach 100 girls, they will tell 5 others, so we are technically going to reach 500 girls at the same time if you give a session. So that is how we just were like, why don't we do it more often? And that is how we started going to schools. So when you break them, by the way, when you break the news, like you asked the question about using a reusable product, again, they're not very shocked. So I think that is what our assumption was also, that they're going to be like, what is this? Of course they were amazed. I have very cute videos where they are like, this is what the period underwear does, and they're like, ooh, as if it's a magic. So it's very cute, but at the same time, the moment you explain to them, they're actually very smart, so they get it, and they understand it more so because they're used to using cloth. So for them, it is a cleaner version and a more advanced version of a cloth that they already use. So of course they get it, of course they want to use it, they want to access it, and the best part about it is that they know that nobody can take it away from them. So if you know the common problem that these people, underprivileged people, face, is that if you give them a solution, it gets distributed in the entire family. If you give them a chocolate, they will distribute it. If you give them biscuits, they will distribute it, but you can't share a period underwear. And that is what is the best part, that it's theirs for the next 2 years. And yeah, like a mother or a sister cannot share it with them or steal it from them. So they feel really secured actually, that they'll actually have a solution for them, and they don't have to worry to come to school. So yeah.
This is very fascinating to know. So I think this is an insight that you gain from working with
Yeah.
government schools, right? So Did you also work with private schools or international schools? And if you did, how was that response like?
So I realized that's exactly the next question we asked us, which is that why don't we go to private schools again now, like, because that's where we started. So then we were doing both. We still do both. So we went to a private school again, and we realized that the fundamentals remain the same, right? 9 to 11 to 12, 13, 14 years old girls are very curious by nature. The only difference in a private school was that they were more vocal about what they thought. So they were really vocal about facts like, oh, why not cup? Okay, why not this? And I have heard this. So the awareness about reusable aspects and the benefits of sustainability and stuff like that, they already knew. So it was I would say like a slightly more advanced conversation. So their questions weren't very basic. In fact, our insights are not just on periods. They ask questions like, what birth control should one take? And I'm like, oh my god, you're so young to actually know about birth control. I wish I was that aware. And then they actually want to know. So you have to always ensure that you're with the right set of educators answering their questions. So I think that is the only difference. Like, they were as curious about the product, but at the same time they really, yeah, know a little bit more about sustainability. That's the only difference.
Got it, got it. And how do you ensure inclusivity within your product, or how do you cater to diverse body needs or diverse needs of people? So how does that happen with regards to the product? So I think there are different. I've seen that there are different sizes with what you're with the product that you're providing. But how else are you ensuring inclusivity and catering to diverse body needs?
Definitely. That's a great question. It's very core to us actually. So when we were building our MVP, we started doing this, that the girls that were trying, we were building for them, and then we gave our products the sizing code. So it's really funny. So, like, for example, if I believe I'm an M, I would give the product and I would take your measurements, build it for you for the MVP stage, the 100 women that we tried with, and then give them the product. We would ask them, what do you think the size should be? And then we started noting it down. And then after like having 100 women answer to us what size they think they're in, what leg hole that they would want, how long the leg hole should be, how long the waist should be, how elastic it should be, we took all the feedback and then we built our sizing chart, which is what maintained the inclusivity that we did. And a funny story about inclusivity is that we tried our best to go from double XS to like 3XL, and we thought that we are doing an amazing job until a customer actually messaged us that, hey, like, you seem to have, I've been following you, you seem to be inclusive, but you don't have 110 centimeter. And I was like, acha, ye kya hota hai? I actually googled it and then I realized it's 4XL. And you will not believe it, when I shared it with my team, the next day we started building a 4XL, because we couldn't take the fact that we can lose out on a customer, and that too on the basis of her feeling that we did not include her. So we couldn't do that. So that's how we introduced 4XL. Anybody watching this, if you need a 3XS or a 5XL, please let us know. We'll be very happy to introduce that as well.
This is a very nice story. I mean, I've always seen people going with the standardized sizes and then building products, but you actually like took measurements of your users or the people that are trying the product. So it's a very interesting approach. So in terms of also, I had a question regarding this. So right now, what's your distribution channel like? Where are you primarily selling? And have you partnered with any bigger, say, supermarket brands or something where you can place your products with them? Because I've seen in Shark Tank US, sometimes they usually partner with Walmart and places like that, and then they distribute their products there. So, have you tried that approach or are you against it? And what is the current approach that you're following right now?
Sure. So for us, we launched in August 2023. Only we thought we'll be only website. So till I would say December 2023, which was like about 4 5 months, we were only on our own website. That is where we built the first set of customer base, as well as the people who talk to us, who tell us feedback, this and that. And then in January we launched our Amazon store actually, and we have not yet started really making it our primary, or let's say even sub-primary source yet. We are just there, but we are thinking to now actually go there and talk more about Amazon so that we also capture Amazon customers. That's where we are personally. We were only website, and we're still very primarily the website. But what we do differently, one of the distribution channels that you might have missed out, is that we go to lifestyle events. So we are partnered up with Lil Flea, WhatsApp Flea, a couple of other names that I'm forgetting, where the team goes and we go there and actually make people touch and feel our products. So rather than a shop, what has been working for
Okay.
us is going at this blasting lifestyle events where we see a lot of people at the same time, who give us feedback, become our customers, become our community members, and that has worked amazingly with us. For example, in Ahmedabad, Ahmedabad is not usually the top five, or top three cities for people, but because we've gone there for lifestyle events so many times, that Ahmedabad on our website is one of the toppest, like the top grossing cities. So that is what we do. And other than that, we are in talks with brands, like you were saying. Because of NDA reasons, I can't disclose their names, but they're similar to Walmart. They are similar to that kind of supermarket chains that you can definitely partner up with. So we are also doing the same.
Okay, okay. So you're in the talks of partnering with
Yeah.
them right now. Okay, okay. So speaking of breaking the taboos and stigma around menstruation, I think you've really nicely touched upon talking with school students, going to government schools and private schools. But what is your approach in educating, say, a mid 20s or a mid 30s or mid 40s woman? So how do you approach talking to them? Like you have different distribution channels, you go to these flea markets, educate people, but what are some other approaches that you have taken to educate someone who's not in school or college? See, someone's working, someone's a homemaker. So how do you educate
So
them?
honestly, we one thing that was for sure, which works in our favor, is that we are not an NGO. So we are not bound to work in a certain way. We are doing this as an initiative, so we have the freedom to design whatever we want. So when we went to schools, we made the first curriculum. When we went to another school, we made it better. When we went to the next one, we made it even better. So what we keep doing is the same thing that we do to our products, which is iterations to get better. So one of the things that we did for, touching upon the base with the people who are above 20s, and I would say even above 30s, was bracket them into different categories. So a woman who would go to a lifestyle event is very different from a woman who is a housewife, who is in her 40s, who has kids that she needs to cater to, right? So what we started doing was that we call our own personas something. So for example, it's called an Anjali, who is a working woman who comes to flea markets. It's a garima when it's somebody who is a mother and takes care of a child. So we have divided our customers as personas, and then we address it like that. Is this for garima? No, Anjali wouldn't like it, garima might like it. So that's how we do it. So we've done various things. Now coming to answer your question, so for somebody who goes to flea market, what we do is that we try to communicate in a more educative as well as answering format. So we cater our answers by being very specific, quick, converting, so that it's more sales driven, because they already kind of know. But for the ones that are not aware, we do a lot of community activities. So one of the things that we did for above 40 people was that we organized a trek literally on menstruation day. We partnered up with people who are ploggers, which means that they clean the mud and the soil. So we took their partnership, we actually went on a trek. And the reason why we took these women on the trek was that, hey, for one day, care about yourself and not about your child or your husband. And that was the theme of the trek. We took these women out of their houses at a 7 a.m., asked them to care about themselves, talk to each other. And this was like around, I think we gathered more than 70 women who went on the trek. And in that safe environment, we slowly introduced the product as well as the impact that they are having when they use disposables, because we need to be more sensitive towards these women instead of being very, direct with them, which is unlike what we would do to a young person. So yeah, these are some of the initiatives. We also run WhatsApp groups of different kinds to then also talk to these people.
Got it. Got it. I've also seen a lot of startups. Like lately, I've been working with one. I recently resigned, but they've also been user persona changes a lot of things. So you create different user personas, then you go with your first principles
Yeah.
thinking. So that changes the game of what you're building. And moving on, what has been the general feedback to your product been like? What are the themes or suggestions that you've been observing, and any improvements that someone has suggested to you? And also, to make it fun, what was the harsh feedback that you ever received?
For sure, for sure. So when it comes to feedback, I think, like we always say, and I'm truthfully gonna accept it, that we are tech and solution oriented. So the primary and the most positive feedback that we get is, hey, it works. I can't believe it works, because it works, guys. Like, we're not the ones that you're gonna like, it's not the product by Narika that you're gonna take and then think, yeah, absorb nahi hua enough. That is never a problem with us. It is soft. So, like, that's the second thing that I was telling you, the quality, which is again a tech feature for us, that every reaction that we get is, oh, it is so soft, it is so comfortable, it is so much like wearing nothing, and so on. So these are some of the positive aspects. I would say when it comes to a harsh feedback, which is also the negative feedback that we get, is that when a person touches the product at a lifestyle events where they can literally talk to us, the feedback is that we want more colors. And I think that is very harsh, because sometimes, again, because we are solving for inclusive problem, we need to cater to communities. One of the feedbacks we actually got was that they don't use black in underwear, and there are these certain communities in the world, especially in our country, that don't. So that really blew my mind. So when you said like feedback, so they were actually converted as a customer, but they could not get converted because they can't use black. So I was like, oh, okay. So that was really harsh, that I might have lost so many customers and not having to know that aspect. So we started addressing it more often. But yeah,
Got it. I never knew that there are certain communities of people who do
black.
not like or wear
Yeah,
black underwear. Yeah. All right. And what are some potential features that you want to include in your future product, or are you planning to make it in different colors, or any feature that you're thinking of to implement in the existing product?
for sure. So I think existing product may we make betterments every day. So which would again mean in comfort, which is where we want to go. Maybe because of this feedback, we are exploring one more color. Color is not our focus, but yes, we are thinking about a color. We don't want to make the customer spoiled for choices. To be honest, that is the reason why we don't have or don't plan to have 10 colors, because स्पॉइल्ड फॉर चॉइसेस से बेटर है कि पहले प्रोडक्ट की फंक्शनैलिटी को अडेप्ट करके अमेज हो जाओ. So that is why we work this way, but we are thinking of one color. That's where it's going. Other than that, we are definitely trying to solve for these problems. So we might introduce new products, in fact, which is a surprise for our customers. We are testing out a couple of new products, which is not exactly this but very similar. So that is where we are going, so that we can keep, like, for example, one of them I can tell you is for incontinence, for the ones who use the product for the same reasons, but which is incontinence, but at the same time they're not menstruators, right? There are people who are above 60. So what can we do for those people? So we are actually already building a solution for that, and it's in testing, it's in the market actually, for people to test it out. And yeah, those are the things we want to focus on. That's where we are going.
Awesome. Awesome. I think I saw on your website you mentioned pee, sweat, and
Yeah,
periods, or like period pee,
yeah,
sweat. So I think above 60 would definitely be a
yeah,
game changer, because a lot of lot of people above 60, they don't really like using adult
exactly.
diapers. So I had my great grandmother, she passed away recently, but when during the last stages we had to have adult diapers and she
Yeah,
hated it. And I think this would be a really
yeah.
good a banger to the industry. Yeah.
That's how we started.
And I think with
That's how
sorry,
my
go ahead.
dadi's feedback came to light, that she doesn't want to either. Yeah,
Hmm. But I think initially they'll have some sort of uh, apprehension with regards to wearing an underwear, because I see a lot of older women, at least in my family, above 60s, 70s, they don't prefer. But I think it's better to wear an underwear rather than wearing an adult
yeah.
diaper. So I
I mean,
think.
you can wear a combination of it also on a bad day, but this is not for. So that's what we are doing. Like, we don't do it for. Uh, how do I say, medical grade adult diaper को replace नहीं कर रहे हैं. What we are doing is a remedy.
Okay.
So like if you have less than 60 ml, so in one pee, which is a full fledged pee, you can give out up to 90 ml or even more ml of urine, right? We can reach to a 120 ml with our underwear. Now, अगर 120 ml से ज़्यादा discharge होगा, which means 2 sessions of pee, you can't do. So it's technically not for medical grade diapers, because diapers, they literally have capacity of like 400 ml and above. So we can't
Okay.
reach there, but we can reach to a point where my dadi, for example, she's in her 70s, she does not have a problem, but she, with age, your bladder gets weaker. So we are for weak bladders. So like, she actually cannot control sometimes from the moment she gets up from the bed and goes to the washroom, she's not able to control the urge. That is what we are there for. We're there for travel, we're there for office, we are there for walking, for gardening, whatever activities they do. But yeah, like maybe not for every adult diaper replacement, if you see my point.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. All right. So we're almost at the end of the podcast. Also, one thing I was thinking is when we talked about inclusivity, then I think I'm not sure if we missed this aspect. I think you also focus on flow, the
Yeah.
period flow. So you have the light flow, medium, and heavy flow. I think that aspect also comes under inclusivity when you talk about building your products according to
Yeah.
people's needs. Um,
Yeah.
all right. Um,
No,
sorry,
no,
go
that's
ahead.
true. That's true. I actually, like you want to focus more on, like, even as an entrepreneur, it's so insightful to talk to, young people like you, because you start looking at inclusivity in a different manner. Every day I learn from my intern who's 22, and she, as simple as I always say she always says they. And I've been trying so hard
Okay.
to not say she and actually, use the word they more often. And some of the things like this, like even the flows, like I never think of that as inclusive, but maybe I should. So that's actually true. Thank you for the feedback.
No problem. So, is there any advice that you'd like to give to entrepreneurs in general and entrepreneurs who are working on, say, uh, areas with a lot of stigma in it or taboo topics? So, someone who's working in those areas.
For sure. For sure. I think I'm not like gonna give an advice. I would say I can just share my experience and in fact be a supporting person comment I can give. I would say that taboo and stigma and educational, anything that needs, talking, education in the market, people are gonna scare you away from it. People are going to tell you, hey, like, don't do it. The people who care for you will tell you don't do it because they know the kind of problems that come with it. But I would say preparedness can change everything, and it's the perspective that matters. Definitely there was a time when talking about periods was a problem, but honestly we've come this far that I don't think it's a problem anymore. I mean, of course it is for certain people, but I think overall in the zoomed out perspective it's not anymore. So I think every good thing will come by. It's just that go into it if you have the patience, because people are going to say no to you. People are going to say it doesn't make sense to you. And even if they say yes in your face, they might, like, not adopt the solutions, because you're building change, and change hasn't ever in the history of time been easy. So I think, yeah, like my advice is ki hard to hai, it's definitely hard, but if you want to get into it, you can know that it's also very fulfilling. That's all I can say.
Right. Right. I can see the passion that you have. It's very infectious. Awesome. So we're at the end of the podcast, and thank you so much, Shruti, for being here. If you have anything else to say, you can go ahead
No, yeah, I'm good.
to our
I'm
audience.
honestly, like, what I am really amazed by is that how young you started. I'm so in awe of people like you, because I think, like, when I talk about my life and people call me young, I think till 21 I was kidding myself. I would say uske baad, because I started taking myself seriously, people were like, oh, you're so young and you're doing it. I can just imagine what you guys are gonna
Hmm.
do, because you've been doing since I don't know what ages, when I was probably not even capable of leaving this for the city by myself. So you guys are doing so much, building so much. So if honestly anybody needs any help, any support, they can add it in the comment section below. Also, you can also personally let me know if I can help in any way. I would be more than happy to do it for your community and for you.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely. I'll definitely connect people who are interested in the space or in general with
definitely.
you, who can benefit from your experience. So yeah, thank you so much, Shruti, for staying till the end, and thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful talking to you. I did not get distracted even for a single second. I was so focused on your words and conversation. So yeah, thank you so much for
Thank
being here.
you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you guys for watching.